Shabbat Shalom. Wonderful to see so many familiar faces. I am here for this Shabbat and then we'll be gone for a couple of more Shabbats, as on Tuesday I leave for the World Maccabi Games. I'll once again be the rabbi for the United States team. Those of you who don't know, USA. Those of you who don't know, the Maccabi Games are the third largest sporting event in the world. There are 11,000 participants in the juniors and the open categories and the masters categories. And Anthony Irvin, who was the gold medal winner at the Olympics in the 50 freestyle, will be competing for the U.S. team on the swim team. And just another historical tidbit, the games actually originated in 1932, well before the founding of the State of Israel, and grew up really as part of the early Zionist movements as part of the Zionist movement in Eastern Europe. Another exciting tidbit is that Gabby Meltzer, who has had her bat mitzvah here, and she will be playing volleyball for the junior U.S. team, and she and her family are going to be going, so it should be really a wonderful couple of weeks. This past last Shabbos, I was on the beach, and I'm getting a reputation as a nerd in my family because while on the beach, I was reading the first and second book of Samuel. Just decided to. There's a wonderful translation and commentary by Robert Alter that I was enjoying, and was also reading some articles from a website called thetorah.com. It was founded by Professor Mark Brettler, who is a member of Bethel and at Duke University, and brings together really just some of the greatness of biblical scholarship and makes that accessible for others. And so I want to share with you something that an insight from those readings. The article that was on thetorah.com was written by Professor Marty Lokshin, who is in Canada, and he is probably the world's expert on the Rashbam, Rashi's grandson. He's done a translation and commentary, and he was writing about the Tzitzit, about the mitzvah of Tzitzit that concluded last week's Torah portion. And he says to understand the mitzvah of Tzitzit, why it is that we have the obligation to place these fringes on our garments, we have to understand the significance and the symbolism of the hem in the ancient Near East in clothing. His argument is that the hem and what was on the hem of ancient Near Eastern clothing represented power. And we can see this. It coincided a little bit with my reading of 1st and 2nd Samuel, because in the story of Shmuel and Shaul, when Shaul does not do what he's supposed to do, and the prophet Samuel says to him, "You're going to lose the kingdom," Shaul tries to hold on just a little bit longer, and we read Shmuel turned about to go, but Shaul held on to the corner of his cloak, and Shmuel said to him, "Hashem has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today and will give it to your fellow, the one better than you." And later on, as David is waiting in the caves at En-Gedi, is encamped at the caves of En-Gedi, and Shaul sort of wanders up to the opening of the cave, David takes, not scissors, but he cuts the hem of Shaul's garment, and the cutting of the hem is symbolic of removing the kingdom from Shaul. And from this, Lokshin argues that the mitzvah of tzitzit was a way of communicating to each and every member of the Jewish people that we were priests. And he makes the following argument. First of all, the priestly garments are comprised of what the Torah forbids everyone else to wear, which is shatnez. It's the combination of linen and wool, something that's permitted to the priest but is forbidden to everyone else, except except in the garment of the talit, which most scholars believe was actually shatnez, was this forbidden mixture. Most garments were made of linen, and the material which could absorb the dye of the techelet, the blue dye, was most likely wool. And therefore, the commandment to wear the tzitzit is essentially, first of all, gives you permission to break something, to break a commandment that applies to the rest of your clothing. And it essentially is an imitation. It says to each of the Jewish people that there is a way in which you are invested with the priesthood. And he also makes the argument that the techelet, which we, if you see it around, I think Don has a talit with it on, and I have a talit at home that has it. So usually you see it as a blue, and many people associate it with the blue of the sky. Lakshan argues that perhaps it might have been purple. And being purple, it symbolized what? Royalty. And so again, it communicated this royal status of each and every one of the Jewish people. So I want to say a couple of things about this. First of all, I think that it's an extraordinary mitzvah. Sometimes if we can just take a step back and listen to the mitzvah for a moment, for each child and each person to be told, can we really accept this about ourselves? Can we really believe about ourselves that we are each invested with the holiness of the priests? That we are each royalty? What would it mean for us to walk through the world with a sense of self-esteem, a sense of love, with a sense of the importance of our own lives, if we internalize the mitzvah of tzitzit, that we are royalty, that our lives are that important? The second thing is understanding this week's Torah portion, because you really can't understand the claim of Korach that begins this week's Torah portion without hearing the echo from the tzitzit in last week's Torah portion. You hear in the mitzvah of tzitzit, we read, V'hitem kiddoshim, you will be holy. And Korach's claim is, kulanu kiddoshim, all of us are holy. So he's essentially making the argument that the Torah makes. And so you're left with this question of, okay, again, what is the problem with the argument that he is making? And I think there are a number of possibilities. One of them I mentioned in the Misha Berach earlier in the service, the argument from Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, that the claim of Korach was one to power as opposed to truth. That when we make a claim to power, then we are diminished and others are diminished. But when we argue about truth, even when we lose, we win because we learn something, we gain something. There's another interesting grammatical explanation that goes back to the pasuk, the verse in the book of Shemot that tells us that we are all holy. V'atem tiyu li mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh. You will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. And this person makes the observation that there, v'goy kadosh, kadosh is in the singular, and says that when we are united as one people, then the holiness can truly spread to all of the people, and all of us can partake in that holiness. The vision of the rabbis of the time of redemption is that there will be an igul, is that there will be a circle of the righteous that surround God. And the idea of a circle is that nobody is closer or farther away, and that everybody is included. So this idea of kadosh, the singular, when we're together. But Korach's claim is kulanu kiddoshim, all of us are holy in the plural. And when we are each individuals as opposed to together, then the holiness doesn't spread in the same way. It's a very nice idea. The problem, by the way, is that in the third paragraph of the Shema, it says V'hitem Kedoshim. It also uses that word for the plural, be holy, right? So it doesn't exactly work. I'll end with one final idea that I think is always important for us to keep in mind. We read that the difference here is that the claim of Korach is you are not tzaddikim and I'm not a tzaddik, right? I'm not so good and you're not so good. We're all holy, right? But we're all holy in the sense of not holy. But Moshe's and that's a humility, but it's what the commentary calls an anava psula, an inappropriate humility. It's a humility that's based in degradation. It's saying, yes, I'm holy because I'm nothing. As opposed to the humility of Moshe, where Moshe says, I am nothing, but the Jewish people are all righteous. And again, in this week's Torah portion, Moshe comes forward and pleads on behalf of the Jewish people. And that sense of being both royalty, of being holy, and also a sense of humility that it does not lift you up above others, but it lifts you up in relation to God, I think is extraordinarily important and a great gift for each and every one of us. Shabbat Shalom. Please rise, page 428, the Chatzi Kaddish before Musaf. Who's leading us in Musaf?